Right, we're live again. Yeah. So that, as I say, cut off short there. That last video. So yeah, unfortunately that did not happen. When I first wrote my account in 2001, I thought that I was literally dusting my hands of it, washing my hands of the whole situation. I thought I've wrote my account. Ufologists can now deal with this, and hopefully some of the information that I provided might help in other cases. So that was the whole reason why I wrote my own written account, was in the hope that a professional ufologist might find snippets of information within that account relative to their own investigations. So that was the whole thrust, and that was the whole objective of writing my account of what happened the 11th hour, which was sent off to Ron Halliday and the late Graham Birdsall, the former editor of UFO magazine, way back. In October 2002, I think it was, this was finished. So, October 2001, I should say. So, all sorts of stuff has happened since I went on to write that report. Let me just take you back. So prior to actually lifting pen to paper, all I had done was write an account of what happened, really, and it was sent off to Ron and Malcolm. And then on the 15th of February 2002, Ron Halliday, one of Scotland's top paranormal researchers, came out to visit myself at my family home, and he got to meet all the other eyewitnesses that were involved in my particular sighting events. So Ron got to meet each individual witness that was involved as I went through the events in a linear format, and then I would introduce each witness as they became involved. So the house was really busy that night. I think there was something like a total of 32 people in my house that night, because everybody that was involved in my sightings all brought along someone else with them that night. So it was I've never seen my living room so packed out. It was like sardines. It was like, Dunkirk. It was like, how many people can we fit in my living room? Let's go for the world record here. So, Ron came out to meet me, met everyone else involved, and he also brought over with him a video which had been submitted to him by a woman called Sandra Whelan, who lived in Livingston. Now, this is quite interesting because it's taken me right back to the actual time all this was going on. Right, so if you can imagine, I've been working all week. It's now my days off. I take my days off. I go clubbing with my brother for his birthday, and I have this UFO encounter, and then it's followed by a closer range encounter 15 minutes later. So that was the Saturday morning at 4:45 and 5 a.m. And I have returned to my work on the Sunday night, and I've literally ran into my work on the Sunday night, and I'm like, see the guys on reception, and I'm like, blah, 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 blah. And I'm like, yeah, I went dancing and then brought my pal home and the dog, and I seen a UFO, and then that was that. And then got home 15 minutes later, there's one at the end of my street, and So yeah, I told the boys in reception. I was told everybody pretty much. I was like, oh my God, this is unbelievable what I've just seen. So later that night, another boy for security started, Frank. Oh, it wasn't Frank. Frank was actually working. It was Frank, Norrie, and Ross were all working on reception that night when I came in. It was Graham that started later on that night. I think he started at 10, half 10. So when he's come in, the boys obviously up reception of when James has come in the night saying he's seen a UFO last night. And so Graham comes down the stairs with a copy of the Daily Record in his hand from Friday, the 3rd of December. And within that Daily Record is the article about Sandra Whelan's sighting in Livingston. And she witnessed this at 8:13 a.m. on the 29th of December. 29th of November, I beg your pardon. And yeah, there's this footage of this object which appears to be changing and moving, changing shape. So, myself and all the other eyewitnesses that were involved throughout December 1999, we all got to review and watch this footage from Sandra Whelan. And as it turns out, that a couple of days later, Sandra had another sighting on I think it was the 3rd of December. So four or 5 days after having her first sighting and recording it, she got further footage, I believe, on the 3rd of December. So as I say, it's now the 5th. It's now Saturday was the 3rd. No, sorry, Friday was the 3rd. Saturday was the 4th. So Sunday's the 5th of December. And Graham comes down the stairs, one of the boys for security, with a copy of the Daily Record. And there's the story. I've got the proof that UFOs really exist. Sandra Whelan records footage, yada yada yada. So I was absolutely elated at discovering that, hey, I'm not the only one that's seeing things in Scotland at the moment. Other people are recording and witnessing UFOs for themselves. I'm not the only one. And there was also a snippet from, I think it was a taxi driver said he saw something in the same article. I'd need to dig it out. So there I had this newspaper article about another event which took place just days apart from my own encounters here in Glasgow, which is basically a stone throw from Livingston. It's not that far away. So, going back now, to fast forwarding now, from then up until now, a lot has happened. As I say, so I went and determined for myself that this area here was indeed part of the craft, which is seen in NASA frame 73. And this was August the 31st, 2012. So, if I can go back through, pardon me, and we'll look at these mission images, and then we'll start going through them all one at a time. So, let's just skip to NASA frames 66, 67, and 68. This is the beginning of the redeployment sequence of the 10 individual images that I earmarked and set aside from all the rest to determine whether or not the object which was seen in frame 73 was indeed a solid physical object. So here we have frame 66 with these anomalous yellow lights in the background. And like I say, if I reduce this image, we will see all this striping going on down the bottom of the image. Now, if you recall from the last video there, I was showing you frame 69 on these mission images. And there it is there, but I'm trying to find the copy which Kai Stoffels supplied me with, which is here. And I mentioned earlier on about this area here. Whoop. I'll just use the box. Right, okay, that big long bar that you see there, that big long white bar, has got nothing to do with Hubble. If I just change that to online. So there is that bar there with light hitting it, and this is why it's highlighted. And the actual bar for the roller, for the solar array, is at this angle. So that area in the background there, which you see, has got nothing to do with the solar array. That is actually an edge of what appears to be a window. So that area there on frame 69, I'm now going to show you on frames 66, 67 and 68. So we're on frame 69 at the moment. Let me see if I jump to here, that's frame 59. So we'll just go to frame 66 just now. And here we will take a look at that very same area that I just showed you just a moment ago on frame 69. So there it is there on frame 69, and there it is there on frame 66, I believe we're on just now. So that area there, like I say, is casting light. Internal light is coming out of this area, and you can see it there highlighting that bar, that little lip at the bottom of that window frame, and it's seen there on NASA frame 66. So if I pull this image up full size now, we now know that this area here behind the solar panel is coming from a structured object, and it's casting light. And that light is being cast onto the solar panel, and then down here, creating this striping. And this striping is actually being caused by the membrane of the solar panel. And the reason why you're seeing this striping is because the light source there, which you see behind the solar panel, is casting light onto the solar panel and then down here. Now, the very fact that, once again, there is a shadow being cast tells you that it has to be falling onto a solid structured object. Otherwise, there would be no shadow. But then we see the reflection of Canadarm, and it is seen reflected here. But these are mysteries, as I say, that eluded me for 10 years until the 4th of May this year, when I finally realised this was the shadow profile of the meshing of the HST, and it was being caused by a light bleeding through that meshing down onto a solid structured physical object. So when I realised that there was evidence of a solid structured physical object still docked alongside Discovery during the redeployment exercise, my eye has ran right back up here to another 10-year-old mystery that I was unable to solve, and that is the partial double image of the HST support bar, which can be seen here, and then you can see the ghost image of the reflection. So this was always, I had a question mark over it. I wasn't sure if this was due to double exposure. I didn't know exactly what I was looking at until I realised and solved this mystery of the shadow profile of the membrane of this solar array. So once I solved this out and realised that this was a solid physical object here, then I have understood why I was seeing this partial double image up here of the HST solar array. But again, I'm jumping the gun. So I want to talk specifically about these anomalous yellow lights with the three-pronged light beams that are coming from them. We'll get zoomed in on that. Oopsie daisy. So please bear with me. Okay, so there they are there. And these are seen throughout frames 66, 67 and 68. Now you can tell there that they most definitely look to be artificial lights, and they are. Now I'm going to jump forward now to frame 70, which was the one taken after, I was going to say after frame 69, but I think you've figured that out. This was the one that was taken after the image, which contains the shadow profile of the Hubble Space Telescope. So in the background of this image, you can see that there is most definitely something still in this mission image, albeit we don't exactly get to see it in all its glory. So I'm going to reduce it, and here we have the lasers. So there is evidence of a solid structured craft here, still in frame 70, but it is not exactly clear. But if we look further down the image, we will see the horizontal laser beam. We'll go further down, we'll see the other one. And there's the second one with the tiny, tiny little point of light hitting it. So I believe this is where these lasers all join up with a little point of light, because that's usually when you get lasers crossing each other. But we have a laser beam here, we have a laser beam here, and then we have lasers up here. These two diagonal lines are really important. Now, please note the gap between them, and we will jump now to frame 73. I'm hoping. Yeah. And we see the trench. Now, wouldn't you say that that trench, the diameter of it, how wide that is, or the width of it, I should say, the width of it corresponds with what is being seen here in frame 70 with these two lines. These two lines, the gap between them, coincides with what is being seen in NASA frame 73. So there's that there with regards to this big trench. And again, this all coincides with what is being seen in NASA frame STS103-74-70. So although the craft doesn't exactly pop out at you here, that's because it is in the process of cloaking itself, and this is something that I'll be covering as we go on in these mission images. So that is frame 70. We jump forward to frame 71, and we will see that this object, which is sitting directly in front of Hubble at the moment, now moves off between frame 70 and frame 71, and can now be seen in the top right hand corner of the frame. And more details are starting to become discernible now, and you can still see that trench there. So, and if you follow that down, you'll see a couple of points on light. So that's frame 71, and as you can see, it's no longer sitting in front of Hubble because it's moved. So then we get to frame 72, and we can see that more of the structure is now becoming apparent as it comes into the sunlight. And then we get to frame 73, which is the one that I learned about in 2010. So here it is here, and with the partial double image of itself, which is not NOT, not a result of double exposure or refraction. This is actually being generated by the craft itself, and this wasn't learned until 2022. So this was an absolute revelation to discover this, that this craft is actually projecting an image of itself. So that was really, really helpful in going on to determine the operational capabilities of this craft and understanding all its functions and the purpose in which they serve. So, I'm trying to think. I mean, it's not as if I've scripted this and went, right, okay, I'm going to stick to this and I'm just ad-libbing it, guys. So, you will need to bear with me. Now, I should also point out as well that there are two entities which are seen in these mission images standing against windows looking out at the Hubble and Discovery as they fly past in this craft. And these entities I will go into discussing at a later point again, because there's just so much to cover within these mission images. So going back to, well, not going back to, but sticking specifically with frame 73 just now, I want to talk about how this all works in relation to this area here, which I'm looking at now. I'm going to open this up in Paint and show you the exact area, so there's no misconception about what we're looking at. So we'll just go with a big circle, we'll go with a big yellow circle, and we will come right down and get a good look at this. So this area here is what I want to discuss with you guys. Now, last June, this exact time last year, I was contemplating what all these features were, because this big area at the front of the craft was now identified as a big headlight or spotlight, I should say spotlight, a big massive spotlight which is located at the front of this craft. So I found this pretty incredible. Once I'd identified that this was the spotlight, which is seen on NASA frames 49, 50, 51, 52, and 50, 48, 49, 50, 51, and 52, and 53. We'll go to them right now, so there is no misconception about what I'm talking about here. So we'll go to frame 48. And we should get to see a big spotlight in operation. So we're jumping the gun here. Frame 48, it's not switched on. Frame 49 is what I'm looking for. Well, suddenly, no apparent sunrise, as you can see. Absolutely no apparent sunrise, but suddenly, boom! Where did that come from? Yeah, bright, beautiful, isn't it? Angelic almost. So that is not the sun. And that is the actual spotlight on the craft. Here we have frame 50. And as I say, no apparent sunrise. Now, the good thing about it all is that we know that there is a 90-minute rotational cycle with sunrise and sunset with regards to the STS103 mission. You're getting sunrise 45 minutes later, you're getting sunset. 45 minutes later, you're getting sunrise, and so forth. So it's a 90-minute rotational cycle between dawn and dawn. And based on that, I was able to work out that if sunrise was occurring at 11 o'clock and we had a 90-minute sunrise and sunset cycle, then this object, which is seen in these NASA mission images, was not the sun, because the sun isn't due to rise for another 7 or 8 minutes. So this object here, which is seen in these NASA mission images, was completely outruled as being the sun. So as you can see here, this object is very bright, and I'll tell you all this as well. If it was the sun, all life on Earth would have perished by now, because this is only 323 miles up. It is not the sun, ladies and gentlemen. I have already established that by going through the sunrise and sunset calculations. So there we have that in frame 51 and 52. We'll see it switch off again now. So it sat switched on for about 2.5 minutes, 3.5 minutes, I think, and then switches its light off. And there's frame 52, and we'll see it disappear now in frame 6. And frame 53, we'll see that light now deactivate. Well, that is not sunrise and sunset within 3.5 minutes. That doesn't happen. If it was, we would have really, really short working days, you know. So where did it go? It's not there any longer, but whatever is behind Hubble during this time, with that big window area there, which we can see coming all the way down, which is the that yellowish area is the interior, and this is one of the support beams that is round this window area. So we know for a fact that there's something docked alongside Discovery here, and it just cannot be seen properly. But there is something there, and it is evident behind that solar panel there. And we can see more of that framed area running up here on the right hand side of the roller bar. You can see that when we come up to the top of the support bar is at the top, you can see a bluish sort of ovally loop, and that continues right all the way down the support bar. So something is docked beside Discovery during this time. So that is frame 53. Now we'll go to frame 54, and this is an interior shot of Discovery. And this is the first of 3 images taken inside the orbiter, of the inside of the orbiter, but also showing a view outside the window. And what do we have outside the window? Well, we have 1, 2, 3 sets of yellow anomalous lights. Now let's go back to frame 66. Boom. And those yellow anomalous lights that we've seen on approach at the beginning of this sequence. So I'll pull this up full size. Maybe not. Why is that not opening up? That's not right. There we go. Okay, so we've got these yellow lights in the background approaching Hubble in frame 66, 67, and 68. And this, oh, it's not responding. This is not good. Okay, so there's all yellow lights above my box. And here they are now, seen on NASA frame STS103-74-54. I think I've got this opened up in my phone images here. No. Okay. I'll find that in a moment. So we'll have yellow anomalous lights outside the orbiter in frames 54, 55, and 56. Let's look at frame 55. We're just going to see more of the same. So we have the interior, window, 3 craft outside the orbiter. So let's have a wee look. And there we have 1 set of double yellow lights, 2 sets of double yellow lights, and 3 sets of double yellow lights, all outside the orbiter. And then we jump to frame 56 and we see the same again. So what could these be? What could these possibly be? So there we are, 1, 2, 3, all outside the orbiter. This image isn't as clear as frame 55, but we can still see that these things are out there in orbit. So this is where we jump back now to frame 73. And this area here, which I mentioned earlier, okay, so these double-barreled recessed areas that you see here are also repeated here, and they are also repeated further down here. I'd need to enhance this to bring it up so you can see these double features again. But these are located all around the perimeter of the spotlight. And the more that I looked at them and tried to figure out what was going on, and I'm looking at these and I'm thinking, well, it boiled down to one of two things. They were either thrusters or they were lights. And I realised that if they were indeed lights and torch beams were to come out of these double recessed barrels, the configuration there with that angled, inclined half pyramid area, which you see coming up here like so. There we go. So I've realised that this area here, with these two areas, these two holes, that I've came to realise that if these were letting out torch beams, then the light coming out of them would create a third residual beam of light from the angles of this, where the light bleeds from both of these torch beams and creates a third residual beam of light. And with that, I instantly remembered the anomalous yellow lights which were being seen in frame 66, 67, and 68. So there they are there. And I'll bring this across. There we go. And we have, whoops, sorry. Wrong one. And should be here. Yep, there we go. So I'll remove that other one. So these recessed holes contain recessed lighting hubs, And there we have, you can see there with the triangular formation of that area. Oh, please let me do this. Be good. I don't know why it keeps doing this to me. Right, that'll just have to do it. There we go. Is that better? So, when I realised that this configuration on this spotlight hub fitted the bill of what is being seen in NASA frames 66, 67 and 68, my next port of call was to now take the details from frame 68 with these anomalous lights and now do an overlap with frame 73 to test this hypothesis and see if I was correct. And I did so. And last June, I performed that overlap. And here we go. And this is the result. So let me just find that for you. Here we go. So, ladies and gentlemen, your anomalous yellow lights, which appear in NASA frames 66, 67 and 68, just prior to the UFO pulling up directly in front of the Hubble Space Telescope with the shadow profile of the Hubble on its hull. We had these three mission images, 66, 67 and 68, with these yellow anomalous lights in the background. So after performing an overlap of NASA frames 68 and 73, we see here that, there we go. The configuration of these lighting hubs matched up perfectly with these anomalous yellow lights. So I established this time last year that the yellow anomalous lights which are seen on approach towards Hubble in frame 66, 67 and 68, these yellow lights were coming from this spotlight hub and these recessed barrels which are spread right around the perimeter of the spotlight. So when I was able to do that, I realised that not only had I now established that these lights were coming from the spotlight hub, but I was now able to go back and look at NASA frames 66, 67 and 68, and now I could track the position of the craft in these mission frames. So now I was able to establish that these yellow lights, which are seen on approach towards Hubble and Discovery in NASA frames 66, 67 and 68, were connected to the solid physical craft, which is seen in NASA frame 73, and these anomalous yellow lights were coming from these areas here spread around the spotlight. So when it came down to reviewing NASA frames STS103-734-54, 55 and 56, these yellow lights, which are seen outside the orbiter, were all solid structured physical spacecraft, the very same kind seen here in NASA frame 73. So there were numerous craft identical to this one, all in orbit with Hubble and Discovery during STS103. And by doing this overlap of frame 68 with frame 73 here, I not only established that the yellow lights were coming from this area, but I was then able to track the craft in all 10 redeployment images as well as being able to go back now and identify that the yellow anomalous lights seen in the three mission images were all coming from technological, solid, structured spacecraft. So this was all established last year. Let's move on now. So basically, in August 31st, 2012, I established that there was a solid structured craft in orbit with Hubble and Discovery. And I went on to publish this information in 2014, as I say. But prior to publishing this information, I contacted MUFON's image expert, Mark D'Antonio, for his opinion. And I've got back to him and I says, Mark, I have discovered the presence of a solid structured physical craft in orbit with Hubble and Discovery, XYZ. And then Mark got back to me and dismissed my findings because I didn't have 35 years experience, unlike him, and therefore I was wrong. And also the very fact that I did not have friends that put satellites into orbit, but he did, also proved that I was wrong. Anyway, Mark did his analysis by proclamation. He did no analysis on these mission images. Did you see that there? That was not deliberate. That was not deliberate, but that is. So Mark D'Antonio was very dismissive of me at the fact that I was saying, this is what this is. And he says, no, it's reflections. And I'm like, no, Mark, it isn't. And this is why. But again, Mark, his nose was completely out of joint because how dare a rookie like me come along and try to tell someone with 35 years experience what they were looking at. So Mark D'Antonio didn't do MUFON any favours by the way he handled me coming forward with this information, and MUFON seriously lost out as a result, and the world lost out because, as far as I'm concerned, this may have been dealt with a lot quicker. It may have been established a lot quicker. It may be common knowledge today if only Mark had not spat the dummy out and just listened, heard me out, and then jumped. But he jumped the gun. He jumped the gun, and as I say, it was a tragedy for ufology as far as I'm concerned, and it was very. It discouraged me from wanting to go passing on information to professional ufologists. If this was the attitude, very dismissive and very snobbish. And you know what? I've learned over the years that this is sort of part and parcel of ufology. Everybody is doing their own thing. There is no real community per se. There's just lots of individuals out there that are interested in UFOs and the subject of ufology. There is no community as far as I'm concerned because I really don't see any community spirit when it comes to this information. So yeah, there's too many egos in ufology, and that's a big, big problem. There needs to be some sort of oversight committee that deals with all of this, and the office of ufology, has to put a stamp on something because right now all we have is chaos and opinions, and everybody's, as I say, are all too far concerned with what they are doing or with what the government are doing. Oh, the government, oh no, Luis Elizondo's just quit the Pentagon and came forward to tell us that the Pentagon don't know, which is bullshit. Luis Elizondo may have, genuine reasons for coming forward and all that, but he is going about telling everyone 100% inaccurate information when he states that the executive branch and the lawmakers and all that are trying to still determine what these things are, which is absolute claptrap, jabberwocky nonsense. And I get really uptight when I see people like Elizondo going forward to talk their rubbish, and the red carpet gets rolled out for them, and everybody just throws rose petals wherever they walk. But there's more going on, It's like the analogy I have is, when you were young, you were told you don't take candy for strangers, and it's the same thing that applies with the UFO information. Do not take UFO candy from strangers, especially ones that used to wear fucking trench coats and fedoras. So we're talking about a former intelligence analyst for the Pentagon now coming out and telling everybody the wrong information. You not find that quite? How could he get it so wrong if he worked for the Pentagon for all those years? And he said that he worked between the years of 2008 and 2017 trying to determine the origin of these things and failed to do so. But it makes no sense as to why the Pentagon would want to set up ATIP in 2007, 7 years after the events in orbit on STS103, because it's going to become very apparent, ladies and gentlemen, that NASA already know what these are. They're working with them, and therefore, Bill Nelson, NASA director, SETI chair Jill Tarter, senior SETI astronomer Seth Shostak, and the likes of Agent Luz Elizondo are all talking absolute utter jabberwocky. So let us continue with this breakdown of these mission images, and we will soon get to see the long short of it. In fact, do you know what? Seeing as we're here on frame 54 at the moment, I will go into my files and I am going to go to frame 55. Now, I had this frame professionally cleaned up last summer, and this was because I became suspicious that the three craft which are seen in NASA frames 54, 55, and 56, I started to form the opinion that they were either in the process of docking or launching, or were possibly on a landing bay of some form or another. Now, I was completely wrong about that, but I was completely right in my suspicion that there was a larger object within this, not this mission image, sorry, frame 55. But it will be in this mission image, because if it's in frame 55, then it's sure as hell going to be in frame 54 and 56. So this is frame 55. And as I say, I became convinced that there was some sort of landing bay, and something was maybe in the process of either docking or launching. So I was convinced that there was something larger in this mission image, and I got it cleaned up because I wanted to try and see these craft in greater clarity. And so it was. So last summer, I had frame 55 cleaned up. Now, this was the second of these NASA mission images that I had rendered and restored. And I had already established this thing was in orbit, which you're about to see. So I had frame 58 cleaned up first, and then later in time I went back and had frame 55 done, followed by frame 59 over the course of the new year, into 2021, into 2022. Ladies and gentlemen, introducing the MoMA cube. So let me just bring this down, And there we have it. It's huge, and sorry I've put my big copyright over the top of that with the crafter, but I just didn't want everybody stealing my work and passing it off as their own. So this is why I copyrighted these images and notified NASA that I was doing so as well. So here we have a gigantic cube in orbit. Now, if you look where it says copyright and you see the Y and the R, in between the two, you will see one of those craft. The orbiter, won't be too much bigger than these little yellow craft that you've seen off in the distance. And this thing up here is massive. And as you can see, there are lots of slots all the way around this craft, even on the corners. And I came to realise that these are all launch and landing bays. And the ones on the corner, I realised must be for the likes of the big set square type triangle UFOs, the type that was seen in Phoenix, Arizona, or Arizona, Phoenix. Arizona, Phoenix, Arizona, yeah, Phoenix, Arizona in 1997, and also observed by my friend Darren Cooper. In 2008, I believe it was. He's seen one of these things extremely close range. So yeah, I believe that these large slots on the corners are for these much larger craft. Yeah, and the whole thing, as I say, is covered in launch bays and landing bays. So it's really interesting. It's massive, and the Discovery could easily fit on one of those launch bays, which is pretty incredible. So that is frame 55, and that was it after I got it cleaned up. So this was, as I say, the second NASA frame which confirmed the presence of this massive cube structure in orbit, along with these multiple yellow solid structured craft, which have now been identified as craft thanks to the overlap I performed on NASA frames 66, 68, and 73. Beg your pardon, I need more coffee. So, this was all established last year. And I was obviously beside myself at learning all this. That this object appears in these mission images. So I was starting to learn very quickly that the structured craft which was seen in NASA frame STS103-734-69, it wasn't just a sort of unexpected flyby that just happened to coincide with the redeployment operation. So the more I looked at these images, the more picture started to form, and then after getting frame 55 and 58 rendered, and then 55, and having confirmation of this massive MoMA cube, as I called it, it's an imposing structure. So we'll take the edge off it by giving it a cute name. That's my approach to that, because if you want to stare at that and get freaked out, that's fair enough. But I just called it the Mama Cube because it's imposing and you don't mess with Big Mama, right? So that's where that came from. Mothership Cube, Mama Cube, and it became apparent that there was a lot more going on in orbit than I had been first aware of when I discovered the shadow profile of the Hubble on the hull of that craft in 2012. But so there is that, and as we now know, these yellow anomalous lights, which are seen in the background, are connected to the spotlight housing at the front of the craft, which contains the recessed additional lighting hubs, which are spread right around the perimeter of the spotlight. So let's go back and talk about a spotlight now. Here we have on frame 59. Again, I'm jumping the gun, but I need to take you back and forth over the last 10 years because I'm not going to be able to just string it all together. It just has to come as it falls out my mouth at the moment because I'm totally ad-libbing this presentation. So we have this blue-white oval-shaped UFO in the background of frame 59. And again, as I say, way back in 2010 when I first came across this, it made the hairs in the back of my neck stand on end because it's very, very similar to the object on the front cover of my artwork, which is pretty much what I see throughout that month. So this object here in the background, we now know that the white oval that we're looking at in the background there is actually being caused by this big parabola upside down bowl, which is at the front of this craft, which is the spotlight. So there was that. So we now know that this object, which is seen in the background of NASA frame STS103-734-59, is also very likely to be a solid structured physical craft, the exact same as the one which appears in NASA frame 73. So that area there is a big spotlight which you see in the background here. And that headlight area that I mentioned to you earlier on, let me see if I've still got that open from earlier. There we go. I will try and reduce this. Okay, I think it's too small, but I'll bring it up to there and we'll see where we go with it in a second. Okay. Now, 2018. So 6 years after I have discovered the shadow profile of the Hubble Space Telescope on the hull of the craft in NASA frame 69, I have went back and done a review of my earlier research, hoping to build upon it. The 2018 wasn't a good year for me, and Project Wheelbarrow is the name that I gave to this exercise, which was a return to my previous research on these mission images. Now that's too big, so what I could do with this is bring that up and hopefully I can get some sort of sizing drawn up here in a wee second for you. So, boom, there it is. So this area here, which identified in 2012 as being part of the same structured craft which is being seen on NASA frame 73, this area here right above my head. Here it is here, once again, it's the exact same feature, only seen on frame 69, sorry. And here I am now taking that area from frame 69 and sizing it up with frame 59. And hopefully you can see there at the left hand side above that oval, you will see the same stepped feature, only a symmetrical opposite. And I realised that I had now found the matching opposite symmetrical area on this object, which confirmed that it was one of these craft with the spotlight at the front of it, as seen on frame 57 with this big spotlight round here. So this was all established beyond any doubt that this was a solid structured physical vehicle. Now I'm going to now cut to Project Wheelbarrow. And I'm going to show you what I did. So Project Wheelbarrow. Now Project Wheelbarrow consists of a photo fit which I took of the available details from NASA frame STS103-74-69 with the shadow of the Hubble telescope on it. So that is the exposed image from frame 69. And what I did was I looked at this area off to the right hand side of the craft where you can see the light running right along the rim of the hull of this craft. So I used that as my guide for the edge of the craft, and I then used the curvature of the craft in frame 69. I'll pull that back up so you can see it. So frame 69. And there we have that detail there. Okay, so all this detail here, I took and I used the curvature of the top of the craft as a guide with the light which is, the light which is running across that object. Let's see if I bring that back up, or am I going to lose it? Excuse me a second, guys. There's my cat. I need to go and let him back in before he gets torn to pieces by a bunch of foxes. 2 seconds. Okay, everyone. Crisis averted once again. Dingle. Happy cat. That's it. He's on tact. He's got 4 paws. He's still there. He's not been eaten tonight. Right. So, your craft here on frame 59. As I say, I went on to establish beyond any doubt that this object seen in NASA frame 59 I'll find it yet. Okay, maybe not. Down a bit. Oh, there we go. Down and to the left. Because there's something right there. But I haven't managed to get this extracted yet. More cash, more funding needs to be made available. So this object here, as I say, I took the details from NASA frame STS103-74-69 and then overlapped it with the available details from STS103-74-59 and created an overlap. And that's not it. So this is a result of the partial overlap of the details by using the curvature of the craft from frame 59 and then using the light which runs along the rim of the craft, and I sized the two of them up. And I thought, right, well, if I can get that angle to come down to coincide with the light coming up to the edge of the craft, then that should give me my extreme edge. And I sized the two of them up. And when I sized the two of them up, this is what I got. And at first, I didn't realise, but then it hit me what I'd found, and I was elated because I had now went on to discover that the area within the red circle is the matching right hand side headlight to the one in the yellow circle, which is the left hand side headlight. So I pretty much established that I had built up a front profile of this craft, considering it was sitting directly in front of Hubble. I formed the opinion that it had to be facing it. So I realised that I had built up a front profile of this craft by doing this partial overlap of frames 59 and frames 69. In an attempt to build up a better profile of the craft, I actually had a 100% success rate when I identified this matching headlight. Now, once again, I didn't know that these were headlights in 2018. But after identifying these, I started to work on this problematic mystery. Could these be headlights or something else? So the 2 obvious things that they could possibly be were reverse thrusters or lights. And it wasn't until I started to do my various other research that I had picked up over the years that I realised that I was indeed looking at a pair of headlights. Now let me just take you to Thetford, Norfolk on the 2nd of December at 3 a.m. Now I mentioned this earlier on. Now this is where this particular report, or these 2 particular reports that are mentioned and highlighted in corroborating evidence published in 2014, I had realised the significance of these 2 reports and made note of them. Now, this is up until this point, I had been tracking blue, white, oval-shaped UFOs around the planet. But time and time again, I kept coming across these triangular craft that were being seen left, right, and centre, and amongst all this. So I started to form the opinion, like, are they connected? What is going on? Could these black triangular craft be super secret military aircraft that have maybe been dispatched to try and deal with this? What is going on exactly? So there was all these question marks surrounding these triangular craft that were being seen around the world at that time. So here we have the report from Thetford at 3 a.m. on the 2nd of December, Norfolk. One triangular object with 2 lights displayed in a similar manner to headlights. Object rotated in a vertical axis and then descended. And that was 3 o'clock, Norfolk. Then we have a report 55 minutes later. I saw a triangle with 2 headlights positioned about a third of the way back on each side, round white lights on each tip about the triangle and a red light in the centre. The other 2 witnesses saw a triangle with a yellowish light in the centre. Now, I've just covered the redeployment frames 66, 67 and 68, and I have showed you that those yellow anomalous lights with 3-pronged torch beams were coming from the recessed areas around the periphery of the spotlight, which is seen in frame 73. So we now know that the spotlight at the front of this craft has yellow lighting, as seen in frames 66, 67 and 68. But we've also went through frames 53, 54, 55 and 56, showing multiple craft outside the orbiter, all with yellow lighting. So this report here was dynamite. It was gold dust, basically, because this eyewitness's description of a triangle with headlights and a yellowish light at the front coincides with what is being seen on the NASA redeployment images from STS103. And there we have another eyewitness that said they saw a triangular down at the bottom. It says another witness cited a triangular-shaped craft. Each of these witnesses drew the same craft, complete with headlights. So, as I say, when we turn our attention to Project Wheelbarrow and what I discovered at the end of throughout 2018, I discovered headlights on this craft, and then that took me right back to this function here, which is obviously the detail which is seen. Oh, it's a bit large now. I'll have a hard time reducing that now. Oh, there we go. So that area there, which is seen on NASA frame 69, sits here, and there's its symmetrical opposite within the yellow circle. So it wasn't until last year that I suddenly realised that these were indeed headlights. And this also tallied in very nicely with Brian Renworth's description. And Brian Renworth was a gentleman from Australia who was travelling along the New England Highway on December the 5th or the 6th of December 1999. Australian outback, big, middle of nowhere. And this elderly gentleman driving along in his Subaru, I think it was a Subaru estate wagon thing he had, said that he was followed for around a quarter of an hour by an object which was behind him. He thought it was a trailer with its high beams on, which concerned him greatly, because it was all over the road behind him, basically, and it had its high beams on. And then he turned a corner in the road and encountered what he said was a craft which looked like an island in the middle of the road and on both sides. And he says, and as he turned the corner and approached this thing, he said everything suddenly turned red. He says he saw a laser beam hitting off his mirror, and it bounced up and hit him in the eyes, and it absolutely blinded him. So he stopped the car, pulled over to the side of the road, totally blinded, and had to sit there. I think it was for anywhere between half an hour and an hour before he was actually fit enough to start driving again. But he said at no point whatsoever did he ever recall this trailer, which had its high beams on just prior to this encounter taking place. At no point did he see this pass him the whole time he was sitting there. So this report of an object with its high beams on also tallies in with what was discovered in orbit on these mission photos. That is not the only account. I have another account of. I'm trying to think. My mind's going blank. So there was lots of reports. I'll remember, and I'll come back to me in a minute. Yeah. So there was so many wee reports that were mentioning headlights and high beams on and everything, and it all, as I say, coincides with what is being seen in the STS103 redeployment images. So this was 2018 when I made this matching headlight on this craft, and it, as I say, it tallies in with what was being seen in England, Australia, Canada, France, Italy. I have reports in 5 different countries during December 1999 of these triangular craft, which showed that their operations were global in nature and suggested that these triangular craft were not the result of super secret government aircraft. So that was 2018 that I established that these were matching features, and then, as I say, in 2021, it suddenly hit me that these reports from December, the 1st and 2nd, and Brian Renmer's account all tallied in very nicely with what I had discovered in orbit. So that was 2018. Then we get to 2021, and we come back to NASA frame STS103-74-73. Now this is where it gets interesting again. Now, I had known about these mission images for 12 years at this point, and last summer it only hit me for the very, very first time. Another one of these little mysteries that I never ever get round to solving was suddenly laid out in front of me, as plain as day. Now, I had been watching the Hubble redeployment, the Hubble, sorry, I had been watching STS103 slash Flight 96 post-flight presentation on that mission. And I'm going to pause this and I'll pull it up, and then we will discuss that in further depth. So bear with me a wee minute, guys, and we will watch the redeployment sequence in operation as it took place. I was about to say live, but you know what I mean, recorded live. So bear with me 2 seconds, and we will pull that up. I don't know why that's not coming up for me. Right, okay. Let's try again. I'll pull that down. And I'll see you guys in a wee second, okay? Cheers. Okay, how we doing? All right. I should be pulling that up any second for you. Here it is. And all we need to do is make our way through all these. We will eventually come down to it. And 61. There we go. Flight 96. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to turn this down a little bit because there's all sorts of, it's all a case of, oh, we at NASA, the sun shines out our buttocks at NASA. Oh, we are good. We are wholesome. We have everyone's interest at heart. Parenting humanity. Absolutely disgusting. What I have learned with these individuals work for NASA. They are doing their own thing, breakaway civilization and all that. It's all true. You better believe it, we have set foot on other worlds, guys. I'll tell you that right now. Now, here is they're talking about the build up now to the redeployment. So I'm going to let this play out. A couple of things I want you to take note of is we want you to notice their shirts. They are pretty groovy. The shirts just happen to be the exact same colour as the skin tone of these alien entities that are seen on these NASA mission images, which I found really interesting. Also, they also state on this presentation that they had a special visitor that Christmas, which was also very interesting. This particular part of the mission here where you see John Grunsfeld and I'm not sure the other astronaut there with him, but John Grunsfeld, something catches his attention and you see him avert his eyes and look, and then he goes to thumbs up something off in the distance. So we'll see what he does here. And this was all very telling. And I'll tell you what else is very telling. The general, the general demeanour of the astronauts and how relaxed and at ease they are, where they can all carry on and party, regardless that all this alien activity is taking place round about them. So this was very, very, very telling in itself and showed that this was not NASA's first rodeo in orbit with alien entities. So all this information, as I say, wee snippets of information here, there and everywhere, on its own could completely go under the radar, but collected over the space of 20 years and put into context, what is given away within this post-flight presentation is absolute mind-blowing. When we see that the astronauts were all very relaxed, no signs of alarm, panic, distress, fear, none of that. Just jovial. They got on very professional. They all got on with their jobs, and then they're all very relaxed and they're having a wee Christmas party. And you actually see one of the astronauts waving out the window, and it's a rather intense wave. It's not a case of "Hi Earth." It's a case of "All right," and they are not waving at anyone on Earth, but they are waving to the occupants of these craft that are all starting run about them in orbit. So I'm going to let this play out, and you can listen to what the astronaut has to say about the redeployment of Hubble. And you will also hear him talk about how bright the orbiter is during the redeployment. Once again, verifying what I discovered in orbit on August the 31st, 2012, when I discovered the shadow profile of the Hubble Space Telescope being cast onto the hull of this craft because of the natural sunlight which is coming up over Australia's Gold Coast, illuminating the entire redeployment in bright natural sunlight. So this is the thing I love the most about busting NASA. With this is the fact that it was natural, God-given sunlight. It was Mother Nature that shed light on the UFO cover-up. So, you know, if there is a God, he acts in very mysterious ways. But the very fact that it was natural sunlight that busts them wide open, just natural sunlight and a bit of God-given intelligence that helped me make these make this analysis and come to these conclusions. Was just absolute dynamite just to see that it was sunlight that busted NASA and then totally writes off all the lies. So here we go. Here is a post-flight presentation where they talk about how bright the orbiter is during the redeployment sequence, and you'll get to see for yourself the natural sunlight that is coming through the orbiter windows during the redeployment. And as I say, they also mention check out our shirts. They're pretty groovy. The shirts, as I say, the colour of the plants on the shirts is identical to the skin tone of these entities. So I believe this was some sort of visual aid that they wore. And again, you'll hear them talking about how they had a special visitor that Christmas. So they cannot, they like any true narcissist, they like to let us know what they're doing without really necessarily telling us. So as I say, there's quite a lot of telling information within this mission resource highlights tape. So let's go for it, and enough of me for the time being, and hopefully we can pull this up now, and I'll get rid of that. and we'll play this now. So you hear them from after the new repairs. We were able to send the telescope into space. So this is coming up. I'll shut up and tune into this. What, John Grunsfeld? Something catches his eye there, and he looks away off, and then he gives a wee wave. Right, watch this, look. Whoop, what's that? Hey! He goes to get a wee. Alright. So he's not looking at the orbiter. He was not looking at the orbiter. Right, listen. Sunlight. Just going to rewind this. And pause. I don't know what that is up there. Canadarm. Before I go back to that, I'd just like to point out as well that, as I say, this area here in front of me is the shadow profile of Canadarm, which is on the hull of this craft, and eluded me for 10 years. I was unable to determine what this is until last year when I actually watched the deployment resource tape, and it became apparent that that's exactly what I was looking at, was the shadow profile of Canadarm there, right there. And there it is there. So that was another little bit of information that showed that this was a solid structured physical craft in orbit. Let's go back now to hearing what the astronauts have to say, and then we'll see them giving the aliens a little wave. So here we go. A motorhome gone wrong. Yep, a motorhome gone wrong. You know what I loved about that presentation when he goes, here we are getting some good. pictures. You had to watch what he was saying there. Could have been so easy for him to go, the big alien spaceship. Oh. So, like I say, the post mission resource highlights tape proved invaluable because not only did we have a visual reference of sunlight passing through the orbiter during the redeployment, showing that the whole area was bathed in bright sunlight, which helped validate, which I found on NASA Frame 69 with the shadow profile of the Hubble Space Telescope. But we also have astronaut Scott Kelly talking about how bright it was as well. And not only that, we get to see them very relaxed, very unalarmed, very unstressed, very unpanicked, while all this was taking place outside the orbiter. So this all told me that this was not NASA's first interaction with aliens in orbit, which then led me to suspect that if I was to go back and review some of the earlier STS missions, the chances of now finding activity on other missions was now quite high. And I started out by visiting NASA mission STS-61, which was a 1993 repair mission to repair Hubble, obviously. So yeah, this was a 1993 mission, and I thought, well, I wonder if I go back to that if I'll find any further evidence of a similar scenario taking place during the deployment of the Hubble Space Telescope on the 1993 mission 6 years prior. And with that, I'm going to take you back now to frame 66. While we're waiting on that coming up, whoopsie daisy, 66. Let's have a look at this. Actually, I've never seen this. Let's just let's just make this 100% instead of 500. We might get to see it a little bit better. Oh, very telling. Very telling. What's this in the background here that we see here? What is that off in the distance there? What could that be? And it's all out of focus. Shouldn't really be there, should it? That's interesting because this is the first I've ever came across this. And that'll have the mission number on it, so I'll be able to go back and look at that later. But based on that, I'm just going to do a little ad-libbing just now. And we'll go back at an image and then we'll go forward an image because this is what I did. I'll be back in 2012. And I was quite surprised. Obviously, as I went along and continued to find things in these mission images. So I have no idea what we're doing, where we're going, what we're going to see here. Yep, all nonsense. If we go to frame 5 now, see what that shows us. And then we'll go back on with the program if we don't see anything interesting. So, okay, nothing I really want to see. So we're going to go to frame 66. As I say, you never know what you'll find. It's like looking at NASA frames is like a box of chocolates. You never know what you'll get. So here we are on frame 66. Back to this. And I don't even think I have covered frames 59, 58 or 59 with you yet. So I really should go back and discuss that. But while we're here, like I say, we have this striping area at the bottom of frame 66, 67, 68. And like I say, once I realised that the crew were all very relaxed during this mission, I've come to realise that it's not the first rodeo in orbit with aliens. So I went back and decided to have a look at STS-61, was my first port of call, going back a further 6 years. Now, I am going to try and pull up. Here we go. So these are the deployment photographs, or the redeployment photographs from STS-61, and this is STS-61 99034. And what do we have here? We have the same striping which is seen on the STS103 mission photographs 66, 67 and 68. And we know that that striping is being caused by light coming down through the meshing of the solar array, casting the shadow of the membrane of the solar array down onto a solid physical object. So when I have realised that the demeanour of the crew was that relaxed, that I had to conclude that this was not their first rodeo in orbit. And that's what made me go back and look at NASA mission STS-61, only to discover that I was 100% correct in my suspicion that I would find a similar scenario taking place in orbit during the redeployment of Hubble on STS-61, and I found it. And this was just based on the psychology of the crew and how they reacted to this alien presence in orbit with them. So the fact that they were all so very relaxed told me it wasn't their first rodeo. And I thought I'll go back and look at other missions and see if I can find a similar scenario taking place on the deployment photos. And there it is. So this now took this working relationship that NASA have with these aliens all the way back to 1993. Now, I've jumped the gun a little bit. We're going to go now to frame 25. Right back in time. We're now going back to... Oh, let me just do that. And I'll fix it in a moment. Aha, that's where I'm going wrong. It'll come up now. So this is taking us right back to 14 minutes to 6, I believe, in the evening. And this is NASA frame STS 103-74-25. And located at the bottom of this mission image is evidence of not one, but two solid structured craft stacked beside Discovery and docked right beside it, going back to 5:45 in the evening. And there we have internal light coming out of both of these craft. So now we jump forward to frame 57. And I think this was taken at 26 minutes past 9. And here we have evidence of that same structured physical craft that we just seen in frame 25, still docked alongside Discovery, here seen with windows and internal lighting coming from these windows. And you can see it continuing along there. You can see a tiny little slither of light just before we get to the support bar for the HST. So we can see that they are perfectly straight lines. So that is a structured, constructed object seen here. So that in itself down here is evidence of a solid physical craft alongside discovery. But then, what's even more important is when we run our eye up the frame and we come across to here, and if you look, you will see there between the canadarm and the support bar that connects the solar array to Hubble, that between the two bars, you will see there are three different colours. There is black, yellow, blue, black. And if we run our eye down the yellow, past the support bar, we'll see another little snippet of that yellow under the support bar. And as far as the blue is concerned, that blue comes down, then you can see it once again behind, in between the support bar for the HST and the actual meshing. So we can see that that continues. And then when we look through the meshing of the solar array, we see that that curvature continues and comes round and lips up and then continues on that straight line going right up again where the blue joins the black. So that is evidence of a solid structured object there with what appears to be a window. And that yellow area that you see there is the inside of that area, and that's the support bar round that window area. So that is evidence of a solid structured physical craft seen right there behind Hubble and through the meshing of the solar array. So there's indication of a solid physical object docked alongside discovery. And as I say, we come down to the bottom of the image, and then we have a big long row of lights with internal lighting, which is again evidence of a solid structured physical object. But as I say, remember we went back to, was it frame 25 we were on, and I said that there was not one, but two craft. And there we have them. So there is two craft stacked. Like so. There. And then boom. So we'll look at frame 57 again. So not one, but two craft docked beside Discovery. Yeah, there's one. I've accounted for that one. There's the other one. Well, if we just zoom across here to the right hand side of frame 57, we will see that there is a window and there's someone looking out. And it just so happens that the shadow of his head is being cast onto his shoulders and his torso. Now, if we enlarge this image, hello, what's going on here? Taking its time, eh? That's not right. Let's see. Oh, it's not even zooming across. Oh, I'm not liking this. But we can see here that there is straight lines, which kind of shows that that is fabrication work. Those are straight lines, and as I say, that is an entity looking out of that particular window. I'm going to just shut some of these because I think maybe laptop's just about to explode. I think it's all too much for it. And let me see if I can reduce this. What happens? Nothing. That's odd. Shouldn't be doing that. Hmm. But yeah, we have an entity at a window, big black eyes, blue skin, and his shadow of his head falling onto his shoulders and torso. So there's your second craft. And this again was taken, I think, 9:25 in the evening. So, just go check. This is still recording. Yeah, we're still recording, despite the fact that my computer seems to have just seized up all of a sudden. But whey, oh, we're working again. Yay! Right, suddenly. So we have this little guy down here. Let me see if I can. Yeah, he's coming up now. Right. Okay, so he's up to 400. And let me pull him over. So here you can see him much better. And I am now going to go back into my files and show you this entity once again after he was cleaned up. Now you might have noticed there I've got a couple of Cylon Raiders for Battlestar Galactica, the original, in there. Because yesterday I was doing a video on how art imitates life and life imitating art and so on and so forth. And I was just mentioning um, the similarities between the War of the Worlds aliens from the Tom Cruise movie in relation to the real thing, which is seen on these mission images. Um, and again, how similar the original, the original Cylon Raiders look for the 1970s, 80s TV series, just how reminiscent these craft are compared to the craft which is seen on the STS103 mission images, the same one I found on NASA frame 69 in 2012. So there is that entity again after he's cleaned up, and you can clearly see that he's a blue skinned entity, big black eyes, and you can see the shadow profile of his head being cast onto his shoulders and torso. So that's frame 57. And I called this guy Arthur after Arthur C. Clarke. I started naming them all. Seeing as I'm becoming that, I'm getting to see them that often, I thought, well, I better start naming them because actually I'm spending that much time in them. I feel as if I've got to know them all. So here's Adam, and the other one's called Buzz. That's Buzz away in the background there, but Adam's up here, and Adam's a man basically, or we don't know what sex he is, but yep. But Adam is like what do you call him? The Big Lebowski. Aye, he's yeah. So the Big Lebowski. Anyway, here we are on NASA frame. Whoops, STS 103-734-58, and that was taken just after the one I just showed you there with the entity I named Arthur. So this is one of the frames that came to my attention in May 2010, and it has all this going on. And I got in touch with NASA this time last year and said to them, look, I'm a bit naive with the internet, but could you just please confirm that that is an official NASA image and this is an official NASA website it's hosted on? And they get back to me and they're like, yes, this is an official NASA website and that is an official NASA image. And I'm like, thank you. You have just gave me confirmation that this image exists. And therefore, if you try to mess about with it at any given point in the future, I now have an email record of you telling me that the details within this are from an official NASA frame. So we fast forward now to 2010, And like I say, I have now just discovered the shadow of Canadarm on the hull of the craft in frame 73. I have then went on to determine that the anomalous yellow lights, which are seen in frames 66 to 68, were coming from the recessed lighting hubs around the spotlight on the craft seen in NASA frames 73. This also explains the white oval, which is seen in NASA frame 59, which we'll come to in a couple of minutes. But here we are on NASA frame 58. And what is incredible about this image is the fact that I allowed myself to ignore this. I was, don't want to know, don't want to know, don't want to know. So they were always just looked at, blankly stared at, and dismissed until last year. And then when the realization hit me what these things were, I then notified my peers, Malcolm Robinson and Ron Halliday, two of Scotland's top paranormal researchers and authors on the subject, notified them of my findings on this mission image and what my intentions were to now do with this image. Now, we know, looking at the previous image, we know that there is evidence of a solid structured physical craft docked alongside the orbiter. But with this frame, NASA frame 58, I started to look at this particular area here on the mission frame. And last year, once again, I applied my knowledge of photography to my line of thinking. And I started to ask myself, well, wait a minute, what if this area here is indeed windows? And this is indeed internal lighting that we are seeing, an internal structure that we are seeing within this object. What is this exactly? And the more I looked at it, then it hit me that there are multiple window arches that run all the way along here, but the light is prevented from escaping all of them, apart from the first two windows that are unobscured. So now I was on the right track, and I thought to myself, well, hold on a minute. This is windows, and that is lighting, and the light is being obscured from escaping all these windows. Then that light has to be prevented from escaping by an obstruction. And if they are windows, then it's very likely that, considering what's going on in orbit just now with the preparations for the redeployment of the Hubble Space Telescope, it made absolute 100% perfect sense that there was a crowd gathered at the windows watching these events as they unfolded. So with that, as I'm looking at this frame and thinking about all this with multiple window arches, and could this possibly be a crowd preventing all this light from escaping these windows? And then I identified the entity within the first obscured window. Now, if you run your eye down from the top with the window arch, you can see the round area of the head. And then you see a tiny snippet of light on the left-hand side, and you can also see light coming down round the back of the head onto the shoulder area on the left-hand side. And then you realise that that is actually a head, shoulders and torso of a bipedal entity standing at the edge of a group of entities all gathered together at these windows watching the redeployment events as they unfolded. So as soon as I have realised, I'm starting to get a bit shaky now thinking about this. As soon as I have realised that this was indeed the case, and I was now actually looking at the silhouette of an entity among a group of entities all gathered at these windows, the sudden realisation that these two also therefore had to be entities, but only in a higher up observation deck of the same craft. And like lightning, the testimony of Melville Knoll popped into my head. The late Melville Knoll, may rest in peace, and God bless him for coming forward and doing what he did that night. Now, Melville Knoll was the primary eyewitness who set events in motion in Illinois on the 5th of January 2000 when it was a particular cold winter that year, and he was visiting his business premises 4 in the morning, or the back of 4. Yeah, 4 o'clock in the morning. I went out to go and check that the pipes at his place of business hadn't burst. And upon arriving at his business, he noticed that there was a bright light in the sky. But went in, went about his business, checked his pipes, came back out. And when he came back out, he noticed that this object was a lot closer. And as he stood and watched it, he realised it was on approach, and pretty quickly it passed directly past him. Now, he described seeing an object which looked like a 2-storey house with a little penthouse on top. So, as soon as I had said the words higher up observation deck, Melville Knowles words entered my head. A little penthouse on top. And that is when I realised that it was very, very likely that I was staring at the same thing that Melville Knoll had described in Illinois 11 days after these images were taken. Also want to point out here that you can see stadium-like lighting behind this solar array. And a lot of eggs are stacked together.